Hi, second graders. We're here at Lake Ellyn to talk about wetlands and bodies of water. So if you look around me, you can see, again, Lake Ellyn. And Lake Ellyn is full of different plants and animals and have different plants and animals that surround it. So whenever you see a body of water, sometimes we think of fish. And Lake Ellyn does have fish. They've had fish as big as your arms and bigger, but they also have other animals. And so they've had turtles, and I've seen a fox and some other animals like birds, which you'll see nesting either on those floating islands that you see out there or in the bushes or maybe up in a tree that's surrounding it. And you'll see a variety of plants. If you walk around the edge of Lake Ellyn, you'll notice very different plants, from plants that are in the water to plants that are along the banks of the water to the trees to all kinds of different things that you see around. So when you're walking around Lake Ellyn, just remember that there are a lot of different types of wildlife in this specific habitat. One of the animals of water habitats are fish. And fish are special to water habitats because they have adaptations called gills, and those gills allow them to breathe underwater. It takes in water and takes out all the oxygen and spits the rest of the water out. So, fish are very special to water habitats. Now, there are some fish that are special to freshwater habitats, like what we see in Lake Ellyn, and then there's fish that are special to saltwater habitats, that are like this anglerfish, who live in the ocean and can't live in freshwater habitats. So even in fish, there are special adaptations as well. So we won't see some of the same fish that we see in the oceans, such as sharks, in Lake Ellyn. There are lots of reptiles that live around water habitats. And when you're exploring around the water habitats that are in Glen Ellyn, like at Lake Ellyn, you might see turtles. And turtles are kind of the most obvious one because they're bigger, they can kind of sit out and you see them. So when you're walking around Lake Ellyn, you might see like what looks like a little rock on the top of the water just kind of moving, and that could be a turtle head poking out. And if you look very carefully, you might be able to see the shell under the water. And then if you're even looking closer, you might notice that there are floating islands in Lake Ellyn. And on those floating islands, sometimes the turtles like to come out and sit up on that island because reptiles rely on the sun to get their energy and the temperature. So they like to bask in the sun to get that energy going. Now, there are also amphibians. Amphibians are cold-blooded too. They need warm weather in order to have their energy and get their body temperatures. So an amphibian that you might see or hear are frogs. And so I say see because frogs, you have to be very slow and very careful because they're a little bit more skittish than turtles. So if you're walking around the lake, you might hear a quick and a frog jump into the water, and that's what that is. So if you want to see a frog, you have to be very slow and very careful and look along the edge of that water to really see frogs. And then when I say hear, it means frogs make sounds, and that's how they communicate. So one of the sounds you might hear is when a frog fills up its throat and it gets really big, and then it lets it out, and you might hear a sound, and that's that frog communicating to other frogs, and that can mean a variety of different things. And if you hear different types of those croaks, then that might be different types of frogs. When you're traveling around water habitats and you're doing your observations, you're going to notice different birds and mammals. So some of the birds that you might see at water habitats could be ducks, like this one here, or you might see geese, or a great blue heron, or an egret, and all of these birds have special adaptations that make them perfect for a water habitat. Like if you look at a duck, they have feet that have webs between their toes. And so that means that their little skin comes all the way down to the bottom and makes it really good for catching that water and swimming. Now there are also mammals that are special to the water, and those mammals could either be in the water and live in the water, or they could be mammals that walk around the water. So some of the mammals that I've seen around Lake Ellyn are fox, a red fox. I've seen deer, and I've seen squirrels, and that's because they rely on some of the plants that are around there, or because fresh water is what they need to stay alive. So when you're doing your observations at different habitats, you want to maybe understand why those animals are there too. It's your turn to be a scientist. Plan out your own investigation and observe. Take a notebook, a pencil, and try and go and write down as many animals or plants that you see around Lake Ellyn. Now, something that scientists do is they look at the same thing over time and see if they see the same results. So, if you're looking for animals, you might want to go maybe 4 or 5 times and write down whether or not you're seeing the same animals or new animals. And that can help us understand what the wildlife is like around Lake Ellyn and if we have a healthy water habitat.